Howdy, everybody in YouTube land. What we have in front of us today is a Tektronix Logic Analyzer. Now, this one has been sent to me for a contract project type related activity. But I figured, it's too cool to just not do a video on, because the thing about this thing is I know nothing about it other than it's a really good logic analyzer for doing retro computer type related activities and even more. But the other thing too is this thing is 100% complete. Like, comes with the top bag. It has all of the cabling and pods and all this stuff, and it's just neat. And it's eons better than those cheap Chinese USB ones, because I have one of those USB ones. But yeah, take the front cover off of it, and that's just gorgeous. And as far as I understand, this thing is a PC, but this is the Tektronix TLA5202 Logic Analyzer. So I did some quick research on this thing before I started doing the video, which is why I started doing the video. Is apparently this is a Pentium 4 PC, and it came out in the early 2000s, which means I have my suspicions that this probably suffers from the capacitor plague. So I want to get this thing apart and check inside. Also, I want to back up the hard drive anyways, which contains the software. Because if you try to download the software, it requires an account with Tektronix, which means you probably need a support contract, which I don't have either. So we need to back up that drive and make sure that if there's any problems that we're not going to continue, we're not going to lose anything, right? So anyways, also the other thing I want to mention too, which is a tangent, is you've probably noticed, but I'm getting a bit more inconsistent with my videos, especially posting them. And I'm probably going to start moving to a bi-weekly schedule. I don't know yet, because the problem is not only I'm running out of content. I mean, I have a ton of content of other genres like car audio, hi-fi audio, things like that I need to go through. It spans back 4 years that I've not edited because it's complex. And also the other thing about it is I'm getting burnt out. I've been doing this so much that I'm starting to lose the energy and the motivation to do it, because let's put it this way. I do videos based on the content and not so much the fluff, because there's so many channels out there that make videos using high quality production, multiple camera angles, professional editing, clickbait titles, and on and on. Like if you were to watch it on TV, that kind of production quality. And it shows, because those are the channels that get the numbers, right? But I don't want to be that popular guy. I don't want to be that, that kind of thing, because it brings in a lot of negative energy as much as it does positive, because you tend to grow a haters base. And I've had some of that on my own channel too, where I've had comments that even got auto moderated by YouTube itself that were just downright nasty. Anyways, the moral of the story is it shows in the numbers. Like, those channels get thousands and thousands of views, tens of thousands of views. And mine, my best videos might get a couple thousand, but the majority of them, maybe 200, 300, 400 views, which is nothing to sneeze at, but you can definitely tell the old school way of doing YouTube videos, like I've been doing since I started, is not popular. It's just not. It's not. And I put so much energy in doing the content, not so much doing the editing, because it's not my passion, but doing the content to have little return on it. And I'm not really getting anything from YouTube as far as ad revenue or anything like that. I might get $100 every 6 months. It's not worth my time. And I'm getting burnt out. And I've done this stuff just for fun. But the pandemic lull is pretty much over at this point. I'm so busy with just work life that I don't have. I've kind of lost my passion to keep going. So I think, unfortunately, after this kind of stuff, and after I get my other videos edited and get it out there, I'm probably going to take a back seat on videos. Maybe do a bi-weekly or something. I haven't decided. I'm just burnt out. I'm burnt out and I don't have the finances to hire editors to do it for me, right? So it is what it is. Anyways, rant aside, moving right along, I want to kind of take this thing apart and see how that works. So how does this come apart? Okay, well, you have a Velcro pad there. It looks like it lifts up. Yep, that's it. Oh, it looks like it's got snap clips. So how to get this apart? I think, yeah, I see 2 Torx screws here. And then there's this little, what is this? Well, nothing. Just nothing. Maybe you put a sticker in there? I'm not sure. Alright, well, let me get those out and see what this thing does. Well, the 2 T15 screws come out, and then those little metal inserts pull right out of there. So that should free up the top cover. I don't see anything else. I mean, it's not lifting up, so I'm going to presume that it slides back, which is easier said than done because this thing is really on there. But it is sliding. I can see that it is. It's just really, really on there. No. But yeah, I'm getting burnt out. You know, I've been struggling with my employment situation for the last, I don't know, 2-3 years. It's not getting any better. And I need to start job hunting soon because I'm done. But anyways, yeah, I don't want to mar up the plastic. Yep, it does slide. I had to get back here with a flat blade and just kind of pull it. But it is out. Yeah, see, there's all the hooks. Perfect. So we've got that removed. I don't know why that door is there. It doesn't expose anything. Other than more screws. More of these T15 screws. So we got to take all these screws out to get inside here. And it looks like this one bends down. So we're going to have to take this off too in order to get to that. Which, in fact, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, this one's fairly straightforward. We have this CD-ROM cover. So we can pull that out just like that. Very simple. And then we have 2 more T15 screws down here. So it looks to be the same screws, so I can just throw them in there with the rest of them. Therefore, this one's probably the same. It slides back. Yep. Wow, that was much easier than the top cover. Sheesh. So, yeah. Well, I see screw holes here, but nothing was ever there. Same here. And here. Perhaps they made a rack mount kit for these. It's hard to say. It would be interesting to look in a catalog to see what all the accessories were for this thing. But it's kind of big. And considering it has a CD-ROM drive, it's definitely a PC. But I just want to take it apart and be mindful of the hard drive that's in here. And be mindful of any potential capacitor plague issues that might be in here. But it could be new enough where we don't have that problem, and this is just a big waste of time. But the thing is, this is an expensive piece of equipment. One that I could never afford out of my own budget. There's no way. So I want to be careful with it, and I want to make sure all of my ducks are in a row before I power this thing up and actually do some stuff with it. Because I have some things coming up in the pipe work that I'd like to do videos on that use this thing. And I think it's going to be cool. Sure enough, that top cover just lifts away once you have all the screws out. And it reveals a lot of things. It's actually kind of neat. So the floppy drive itself is actually USB. They're not using the floppy controller on the motherboard. And this is for sure a Pentium 4. Tell by the heatsink. There's hardly any dust in here, so this thing has hardly ever been used. Upon first glance, we have a board down here that's plugged into the PCI slot, and it's got an ATI Rage mobility chip, which would make sense because it has an LCD in the front, and those mobility chips have the LCD controller built into them. It also has a bunch of other proprietary components in here. Power supply looks like it's routed through that. Yeah, so this board must run all of the acquisition electronics. It must run a lot of things. And the just ATX connector is a bit weird. Oh, hold on. What is this? Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. So this board's got to come out. That's what I wanted to do. Is work on a logic analyzer. But, you know, it makes for good content. We also have a battery down here that probably needs replaced at this point. All of the other caps look okay. But, again, I won't know until I get that board out. How do I get that board out? There's the hard drive. Let's see. What is it? It is a Death Star. Well, it's actually the Hitachi version, so it might be better. It looks original because it's got a tag on it. This one is from May of 2003. Holy shit. I was in Mr. Heilman's English class when this drive was made. In high school. Anyways. Alright, so let's get... I see a bunch more screws. It looks like the remainder of the plastic has to come out in order to remove that carriage assembly. But the hard part is to remove that carriage assembly, we have to remove this board because this board is slotted into the PCI slot. This one's going to be tricky. Let's see. 2 more T15 screws on the top, and the hard drive just slots out of there because there's this little hook bracket. Yeah, May 2003. So we'll set that aside because we need to back that up. Also, I'd like to check the smart data to see if there's any bad sectors, and more importantly, since this is original, I'm curious how many hours are on this machine. We'll find that out in a minute. Alright, so time to continue disassembling this turd muffin. Looks like we have to take the whole thing apart. So I slid all the rest of the plastics off, and it's actually not that dirty. It doesn't seem like it's got high hours, or it was used in a clean room. Don't know. But it looks like we have to take the bottom metal off. We have to take all this apart. All of this apart. Alright, it's Windows 2000 Pro. Got a CD key we can steal. Anyways, so it is a 512 megabyte DRAM, 80 gigabyte hard drive. That tracks because that's an 80 gigabyte hard drive. Man, if I had 80 gigabyte hard drive in 2003, back then I was fighting with an AMD Duron 700 that I was upgrading to a P4 2.0, which only had a 20 gig. Anyways, so 50 field upgrade, not sure what that means. It's a 68 channel, so it's actually 64 channel with 4 clock channels. So this thing's a beast mode. Application software version 4.3. We'll verify that when we get it turned on. Okay, so it looks like I just need to just continue just taking screws out until everything falls apart. That's where I'm at. Wow, I just took the bottom cover off. That is so pretty. I always liked those silver chips. But yeah, that's pretty dang impressive. You can see where this board has the ability to have more channels. You just have to add the components in for it, but that's pretty. Spartan chips. Oh crap, we got a Dallas in here. Assuming it's not dead, because it's, well, let's see, 25 years old. I need to read that before we lose calibration data, because I don't know if I can calibrate this thing. I honestly do not, but anyways, that's really cool. That's a beautiful piece of engineering, and that was the cool thing about test equipment. It's beautiful. It's like, Holy circuit board porn, Batman. But you can tell that's SD RAM just by the design. And it's all Micron RAM, too. Whee! Yeah, I'm seeing 2003 date codes. Like there's one there, one there. Well, we're definitely working with 2003 here. Hey, it's a system clock. Maybe we can logic probe itself. No, never mind. Maxim chips, 44th week of 2003. So this machine was probably made in '03, sold in '04. So this machine is now 20 years old. Oh man, time friggin' flies, doesn't it? Anyways, I don't know how hard it is to get this board out. I'd like to, because I'd like to read this Dallas chip and get the contents dumped before it's lost. I don't know how critical that is, but I don't know, because my biggest worry with things like this is, you know as well as I do, this thing is licensed, right? The software for these kinds of machines are licensed. Now, I don't see a Sentinel key or a hasp key or anything anywhere, and you can see the serial numbers up here. But I bet they store that kind of stuff in things like this, and it reads this out to determine if it's licensed or whatnot, or what its capabilities are. So I need to make sure that's backed up. Once all that was disconnected, the motherboard lifted out pretty much straight off. I got all the screws out. Upon first glance, it looks like it's older than the D865 Pearl that's in the IntelliStar. This is a D845. But so far, that's the only one that I see that's gonna cause me a problem. Now there's a 470 at 10 volt, which looks slightly bulged compared to, say, the adjacent ones, but it's hard to say. It might actually be all right. My big concern is currently that one right there, which kind of makes me think that it's high hour, but at the same time, I do know that these things will pop just sitting new in the bag. It's because that's just how bad it was. It looks like the original RAM is still in there, 512 meg. Alright, well, we have that. We need to service. It looks like the only problem, let me set that out of the way. There's only so much room over here. The only other problem now is getting this board out so I can read the Dallas chip. And of course, the Dallas chip is soldered. Grr. Personally, that should be on a socket, because that chip is going to eventually die, and that's going to be that. Assuming it hasn't already. But, alright, well, I think to get this off, we have to get to these screws, and in order to get to those screws, we got to take the front panel off. Not exactly what I had in mind, but it looks like it slides out, because I see a slidey bit. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that thing slides off the front once I get the screws out, which should be relatively straightforward. That power supply is loose. Oh, this is another thing I need to check. I need to check inside that for plague capacitors, because yeah, to get to the acquisition board, we got to pop the front trim off, which is simply, once you have the screws removed from the bottom, you just grab a tool, flat blade or whatever, and it just pops out and comes loose. There's a clip here, but if you tilt it a certain way, it'll just come off. So now I got to get all the nuts off this and the screws out of the acquisition board. That should remove that, because even though I don't necessarily need to take that board out, I need to back up that Dallas 1230 chip, because I don't want to be caught with my pants down. Just like that, the acquisition board is removed. Boy, she's pretty. Well, that was actually fairly painless. So I got the chip removed now. So I got to see if I have a socket for this, but also I got to pull out my programmer so I can read this and make sure that there's no issues with the contents stored on this chip, because I haven't tried anything yet. Alright, so trusty old TL866. We're going to do the Dallas 1230AB, which is what this is. Select device info shows I gotta put, because I got two programmers and you have to do them two different ways, so I gotta always make sure. So it goes in like this, and then we're gonna go device read range back, and there it is. There's our data. Nice, everything's there. It's a 32K of memory. Yeah, see, there's all of our calibration data. Now you understand why I wanted to save this RAM. Save. We're going to save that, and then we're going to move on. That is awesome. I was able to get a good read, and I can tell it's storing the calibration data just by what the data looks like, that it's not random. So we're good. Now, unfortunately, the socket I had was a 30 pin instead of a 28 pin or 26 or whatever, so I had to remove a couple of the pins. So that means, in theory, if I line this up like so, there we go. Perfect. And it should still clear the bottom case. Yeah, it will. No problem. All right. Okay, so I want to get this acquisition board back in so it doesn't get damaged. And then we're going to take a look at the power supply and see what kind of capacitors we're dealing with inside that power supply. Because if they're not plague caps, I'm going to leave them alone. You know, now that we have all the boards out, we should take a closer look at this proprietary PCI card board to see what we have going on. This one went to the motherboard, which is the front panel controls, which makes sense because that's where our label is here. But we have the P4 connector, all of that stuff, which is coming from this board. But also, we have, as far as chips is concerned, we have some kind of custom ROM there, which I'm sure is the VGA ROM for this mobility. We have a MM9493. Don't know if it's proprietary or not. I haven't looked at it. Same thing over here. But also, we have a 68360, which I believe is the Cold Fire SoC, which is a microcontroller, and it's 68K, which is cool. So we have that going on. We got some SD RAM next to that, some transceivers and other little fun tiddly bits, and DC converters. Yeah, nothing special, but also kind of cool. Alright. Now we got a better look at the floppy drive, and we got a better look at the CD-ROM. And the CD-ROM is a slimline drive for a laptop, and they use this little adapter card that goes to full-size IDE with a Berg connector, which is coming right off the board. So that's neat. Alright, now the all-important power supply, which is Artisan. I don't know, I've never heard of that brand. But there's the model number, there's our outputs. This is back when power supplies had more 5-volt heavy output than the 12 volts. Now it's the opposite. So these are kind of hard to replace these days. But on first glance, it kind of looks like your traditional ATX power supply, but it is not. Why? We've got this proprietariness going on over here. Looks like a traditional ATX connector, a single Molex, but we've got this whatever is going on over here. So this power supply is definitely proprietary, but it's based off of an ATX design. So I want to crack this apart, and I want to see what kind of caps we have, and if we're having any trouble. I mean, from first glance, I can see we've got some quality components in there, but I want to look up the series, and I want to know if they're known bad. Because this is a piece of test equipment, and I want to make sure that everything works properly before I start to use it. So doing some quick research, and then based on my own experience with what I've worked on in the past, the PL series are known leakers. They're not capacitor plague caps. Fortunately, there's no plague caps in here. However, that PL series is a known leaker in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s stuff, because they ran that series for years and years and years. These are likely not leaking right now because this power supply is from 2004. However, it is 20 years old, so chances are high that this will start leaking in a matter of time because of just how old they are, and this is the known series that leak. Now, the Rubicons, I'm not sure. I have to get the series information and Google it. But that's a 3900 at 10 volt, which I do not have on hand. It's a very oddball value. I've got 22s and I've got 47s, but I don't have any 39s. So I'm debating whether or not to replace these because this is 2004 and not 1994. But I don't know. I mean, I want this machine to be as reliable as I can get it, but what I should do, actually, I guess it doesn't really matter because it's not so much how much hours is on it. It's more so how old they are. Well, let me look and see what I got. I want to check these guys out and see what series they are and if they're on the known bad list. Now, I looked up the series of the Rubicons and they are not on the known bad list, but they are old. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a capacitor list on this power supply just to have it. And then that way I'll have it when I need to do some ordering. But in the meantime, I'm just going to leave it alone because they're not bulging, they're not leaking yet, and they're not on the known bad list except for this one from like the early 90s. This is the early 2000s. We're 10 years ahead, but now we're 10 years into the future, so they're 20 years old. So I don't know. It's literally, I'm on the fence with it, but I don't have these right now anyways, and I need to move forward. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep dragging this project further and further behind. So let's get a cap list together and then put this thing back together. Slowly building the list. Now, what I've done is I've logged the ones that I know I don't have and that are ESR critical and stuff like that. All the other ones I'm not going to log, like these hundreds at 25, because I already have those. I have the little 10s at 25 low profiles that are sandwiched in here, which since this is on next to the heatsink, I'm worried about those being dried out. You know, and this 47 here and there's a 47 here. I have all those piddly ones. It's these back here that I don't have. So we should be good to go on that one. Let's hope. And this one I'm not going to mess with. All right, now we need to move on to the most important thing, and that's this motherboard. That capacitor has to go and get replaced because that's not gonna work. The other thing I want to do now is I want to check, assuming it's grounded through this, is I want to check the voltage of this battery. And we're doing pretty good. So I don't know if this battery was replaced or if it's original. Being from 2002, I doubt it's original. It's a Max L, so not likely. Then again, it might be. I don't know. Regardless, it's going to have to come out. In order to get this board out, we got to get all the screws out, but also we've got to get all the standoffs off back here. While I have this apart, not only are we going to change this capacitor, but I think I'm going to pull this heatsink off and repaste the CPU just because of how old it is. I want to make sure that heatsink paste is good to go. And then I also want to pull this battery out and swap it. That way, you know, we can keep our settings, because judging by the amount of dust on it, besides my finger dust, it looks original. So we're just going to replace that, and we're going to replace that cap, and we're going to redo the heat paste. Now, with the heatsink removed, we can see what we got. And that is, we have a 2 gigahertz celery. Ugh, not very great. I mean, the Northwood architecture wasn't that great anyways, but celery version of it is really not that great. But I guess for test instruments like this, it's perfectly fine. Tangentially, I remember in 2003, myself into 2004, I had a P4 2.0 on an ECS motherboard, the P4S5A, and I remember I struggled running Medal of Honor Allied Assault and the expansion pack Spearhead plus Breakthrough I remember struggling hardcore to get anything above 15 to 20 frames per second with that board. Oh man, joys. Anyways, all right, so next up, cap. And then when I get that replaced, I'm going to heat paste all of this back together. Unfortunately, I don't have any 1500s, but I do have some 2200s, so that's what we're going to shove in its hole. That's the 6.3 volt, which I think this is. Yes, we're good. So that's what's going in there. It'll work. A little bit tall, but it's in there. All right, so the new battery is in, and I can tell this is original because I can see the 2003 date stamp. So the fact it holds a charge is really impressive to me. So, but it's replaced. Lastly, we got to get some new Arctic Silver on that CPU, and we can get this thing back together. And that should do it. New cap, new battery, new thermal paste. So hopefully this machine works. It should. It was tested as working when I got it, but with its age, I just needed to make sure there wasn't any play capacitors. But okay, let's get this back in there, and then we need to turn our attention over to the hard drive. Fortunately, it's fairly easy to get back together. No big deal. Next and last step, we need to check this hard drive. So let's get this thing hooked up to this computer over here and do a smart analysis and do a backup image of that drive, just so we know what we have. All right, we're energized with the external adapter, and here we go. I gotta close this because it's anyways. Okay, there it is, 80 gigabytes. Wow, 77 days, 9 hours. Total start-stop count, 254. So this thing is basically new. It's not ever been used. All right, well, I just plugged it in. But we don't have any post. No. All right, well, that's unfortunate. Not entirely certain why that is. Might be, hold on, let me get another monitor plugged in here, because this thing does have onboard VGA as well. It's entirely possible that we lost, when I switched the battery, we lost the CMOS settings. So let me go figure all of that out. Yeah, for some reason, it's using that as its primary monitor, which, it's not, that doesn't make sense. What in the world? What in the world? Something's wrong there. At least Windows is starting up, so we're doing pretty good there, but for some reason the BIOS menu doesn't show or render properly. It's going to make it really hard to switch the primary graphics interface adapter to this one, because this is PCI and this is AGP. And I remember these old ancient BIOSes would default to AGP, and it would never allow PCI to come up unless you go in the BIOS and tell it to. Okay, so we got to figure that out. But I suppose I'll know if the rest of the system works, because it'll try to fire that up. Well, here it goes. Yeah, we're running 5.1 instead of 4.2, so this has been updated. Running power on diagnostics. We're going to see a lot right here. Nice. So it looks like, no, I don't want to do this. No. So what if I hit run? Yep. Alright, so the acquisition board is working. That's awesome. So I need to figure out why. Let's reboot this thing. We gotta figure out what's going on here. Something's wrong. Let me zoom this out because this is hard to get in here. Go back into the BIOS setup because something's wrong there. Oh, I forgot. Windows through 2000 always took 16 years to shut down. Okay, delete key. Let's mash the delete key. No. Maybe it's the F2 key. There we go. Finally. Main, advanced. PCI configuration, no. Boot configuration, plug and play OS. We're going to change that to yes. Alright, so we have that one. Plug and play. Peripheral configuration. Serial port. This has to be mode. This has got to be put in ECP. Or PEPP or whatever. IDE configuration. Both controllers. It sees both, so we're good with that. Diskette we don't have because we're on a... Anyways. Event log. No, don't care. Video configuration. Alright, primary adapter. We're going to change that to PCI. AGP aperture probably doesn't matter. Frame buffer, I don't know. USB configuration. USB 2.0 support. I didn't realize this board did 2.0. Chipset. I'm not going to mess with that. So... let's see, PCI automatic, peripheral. I might switch that to EPP because that's the, you know. Anyways, we don't need audio, but I don't care. Security, don't need power. After power failure, last state. Well, we'll leave that alone. Silent boot enabled. Pixie boot disabled. USB boot enabled. All that stuff's enabled. Let's see. Boot device priority. Let's make sure this is correct. Yeah, I don't know what that is. No, TAC FD05. That's the drive. We're going to change you to CD. And then that is the hard drive. We're going to go floppy, CD, hard drive. That way it'll boot from CD when I need to. Exit saving changes. Now, let's see if this sucker comes on. Yep, there it is. There we go. Whew. Had me scared for a minute. But that makes sense because I remember these old computers, how they were like that. That always drove me nuts. Alright. So now we're going to start back up into Windows 2000. And actually, I need to grab a keyboard and mouse because, anyway, actually, I'm going to do that now. Let me go grab a keyboard and mouse and take this down since we don't need it now. Yeah, that's better. Does the mouse work? Yes, it does. I like this little keyboard because it integrates it all. And actually, it kind of goes with this thing. But, yeah, it's working great. It's working fine. Let's see, is the clock wrong? Yeah, that's what it was. When I replaced the battery, I lost the CMOS settings. I tried to be super fast with it, but you know how that goes. It is what it is. But hey, you know what? It's working. So, I don't know how to use this software yet, but fortunately, I got all of the books and manuals and stuff like that so I can learn how to use it. Not a big deal. So, it's basically working. I got all the probes hooked up. So there's a couple ways to do it. There's only 2 mega samples of sample memory. So to capture as much data as possible, I have to be careful. So what I've done was I've got the clock input connected to the main system clock, which is 32 megahertz or 31.33, blah, blah, blah. And then that is what our sample clock is here. So we have the system clock, which doesn't show anything because it makes sense because that's part of the sample clock. We have our pixel clock, we have our horizontal sync, and we have our vertical sync. And then you can see in the pixel data the blinking floppy icon. You can kind of see it in there, so it is working. You can kind of zoom in and see exactly what's going on. So this tells you the sync periods, this tells you the horizontal, all the pixel clock, because there's a gap in the pixel clock. Actually, it gets a little weird because for some reason, this particular Apple's gate array, the pixel clock leads the VSync period by at least four clock periods. Well, I guess my trigger point is set at the rising edge of the vertical sync, but everything is latched on the falling edge most of the time. So, but yeah, I can just scoot this around and see the data for this one, because it looks like to me vertical sync is active, asserted for one line of video information. And then the rest of it is just, you can see a new line has begun. And then there's this weird gap of time I don't know why. I don't know if that's a front porch or a back porch, but there's this weird gap of time. And then here comes the new pixel data. So there we go. There it is. We know what you're going to ask, right? Because everybody's going to ask this question. Everybody's going to ask this question. And we all know we've got to find out. All right. You ready? You ready? Everybody's got to know. Does it run Doom? Yes, it runs Doom. It runs Doom. Of course, it's a P4 2.0. It better run Doom. It runs Doom almost crazy fast. Let's see, what do we get? 75 frames per second, just about. Nice. All right. Let's see, what else can we run? Quake. 640 by 480. It should run Quake. Nope, it won't run Quake. Probably because we're in Windows 2000. We can't go into like real mode or whatever. Nah, it is what it is. Yeah, that's... yeah, that's... Anyways, we can run Doom. That's the important thing. I also want to see if it'll run Unreal Tournament, because I put that on there. Because when I backed up the hard drive, I copied a couple of things on there. Anyways. Well, how about that? Unreal Tournament UT99 works. So I can literally just... I don't know, start practice section. Oh yeah, let's, you know what? You know where this is going, right? There we go. Yeah, this is hard to, it's hard to like, I'm gonna die. It's hard to do this holding the camera in one hand, but you know what? We have Unreal Tournament 99. Well, that's cool. So you could use this machine as a gaming machine, even though that's not the point of the machine, but that it's fine. So we're just gonna go ahead and trash that because we don't need it anymore. That was cool. And then we're gonna trash DOS Bench because it's not gonna run properly in Windows 2000 anyways. But you get my point. Everything is working perfect. Oh yeah, I gotta throw you away too because that's our configuration. Empty recycle bin. Goodbye. There we go. So This machine is working perfectly fine. I'm gonna move you in there because I don't want it out here on the desktop. Let's open this up, see what we got. Oh boy, it's a Flash app. .4" panel, XGA, blah blah blah. Yeah. See applications. Yeah, we've got to figure out, let's see, easy trigger. That's kind of handy. We can go through the whole setup procedure because if I go, let's restart the software. No, that's not what I want. What's down here? Mouse. TLA server control. I don't know what that's for or why that's there. Oh, hey, we've got check it. Where did I just saw you? There it is. Let's run that. Why not? We can conclude this video running the check it system. Alrighty then, let's do video or graphics test. Or actually, let's do a memory test. We'll run the memory test. Because I think this is the same check it that is also in DOS. We've seen many times in many other channels, the DOS version of this. So let's try the Windows version and see if it works. Windows 2000's all glitched out right there. I've always been kind of interested in how you can run a RAM test inside Windows, because the problem is Windows is occupying memory and the kernel locks that memory up and you have to go through the memory manager on the kernel. And I'm just, how does this work? Because the MMU is going to do all of this because you have to request it through the kernel. So could someone actually explain to me how this test would actually work when you have the overhead of Windows and the NT kernel running on top of it? Because you can't... Yeah. That's awesome. No errors found. So the RAM is working fine. I gotta set the clock. Because it is not December 2001. Even though I kind of wish it was. It is not. It is May the 30th? 2020. Let's see. Alright. May 30th, 2025 at 2:57 p.m. We're Central Daylight, but we're not in, we're actually in Eastern Time over here, which is going to bump that up an hour. We got to go back down an hour. I remember when Windows would do that nonsense. All right, there we go. We're good. May the 30th, 2025. One more thing I want to do is I want to do a graphics test. We're just going to run the... Wow, that's pretty quick. Boing, 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 boing. Yeah, it's all good. So we're going to let this run. Video tests passed. No error found. So I think we're going to be alright with that. The only other thing I got to think or try too is a floppy drive. Does the actual USB floppy work? No. The B drive definitely doesn't work. Oh wait, we have a 3.5-inch floppy E drive, which is strange. Let's try that one. No. I don't think the floppy drive works in this thing. Let's see. Let's see. Hardware. It's been a while since I've used 2000. Holy crap. Oh, la 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 la. Let's see. Tektronix Logic Analyzer. Let's see. Disk drives. There they are. Floppy disk drives. High capacity floppy disk drive. I don't know about that. I might have to disable the onboard floppy controller because it's not using that. It's using USB. So I need a disk to throw in there and see if it'll actually work. Problem is, I don't know which one that is. Let's see. It's not like I need a floppy drive, but let's see what happens. Is it the E drive? No, it is not. In fact, I don't even know what that's mounted to. It's not going to let me click it. I forgot Windows does that crazy, stupid stuff. Nope. What about the A drive? Oh yeah, A drive's working. I just saw it light up. Okay, right-clicking the E drive was terrible. There we go. Yeah, we're good. Okay, that's good. So it is working. It's just for some reason I've got multiple floppy drives when I'm not supposed to. Fine. I'll deal with that. Let's see. Does the CD-ROM drive work? I guess we're going to find out. Again, none of this really matters for what we're doing, but let's find that out now. I hear it spinning up. Does it work? Oh, yes, it does. Cancel. Yep. That's a music CD I put in there. What software is this? I've never seen this version before. Wow, that's built into Windows. I don't recall ever seeing that. I remember using Windows Media Player. You know what? Windows Media Player may not be installed. Yeah, it is. Oh, it's the old one. Okay. Alright, well, let me get rid of that. Yep, she's working. Alright, awesome. Awesome. The drives are good. Hard drive's fine. The system initializes itself without any problems. Going through this wizard is a quick way to test to make sure the acquisition system works. So I'm just going to use my fingers in this probe and swipe it. Yeah, there we go. See the little bars showing up? So, yep, that acquisition board is working perfectly fine. Awesome. Awesome. But yeah, running power on diagnostics, we're doing good. We're doing good. I think I'm going to call it here. We'll get into the functions of this thing later in a different video because I need to read up on how this thing works and how to use it because I don't know. But hey, I think this is a good place to call it. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and all of that fun stuff. Please feel free to leave a comment if you have one. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching.